Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're back looking at the stuff which was passed to the developers in May of 2019, and now it's time to have a look at the miscellaneous stuff, or to me, the really interesting stuff, because it's always nice looking at vehicles, but instead of looking at individual vehicles, isn't it much more fun to look at systems which, benefit the whole game instead of just a shiny toy? The ideas presented today in a lot of these systems are, well, more for modern vehicles, but they're still really interesting and would cover the majority of the game. Also, when it comes down to it, stuff like the bombs being activated in the air and blowing up is something that we just saw in the most recent updates. We also saw more of a move into different types of radar and also the noise that can be created on radar. All of those things are from this section of the game. So for me, talking to a lot of people, a lot of the talk has been around, helicopters of the new updates, and also the fact that you can blow up machines using bombs. So if you if you take those two ideas together, they would be from this miscellaneous section. So this is why this area is very important, and in my opinion, much more important than the other areas. So let's get into it. The first one is from No Camping, a wonderful name, and he asks about or wants the possibility of defining the default camo for each tank on each map. It's pretty much as simple as that. So what he wants to be able to do is before spawning, you could define your winter camo on a map by default, and therefore the next time you play that map, you will have that camo as your default camo. Now, what happens right now is you kind of have an option which is like recommended, and it gives you the camo which the system believes is correct, but there are situations where it would be much better if you could personally define the camo that you want to use. Maybe you actually want to stand out more on certain maps, especially if you're using a heavy tank and you want to brawl a bit more. Maybe take the heat a bit off your allies, or maybe, there is a camo which is slightly better on a more jungle map where the jungle camouflage wouldn't be as good. So wouldn't it be better to give the player more of the impetus to choose what they want to put on, and this would be one of those ways. We've seen a lot of changes over the last few years in War Thunder, which have given players more control over what they can do with their vehicles, whether it be decorations, decals, or the like. So it's nice to see that, going into the future, possibilities like this may become a reality. The next one is from Radeon, and Radeon is asking for a user interface battle rating display. Now, basically, in the scoreboard, he would like to see a battle rating spread of the current match. My guess is it would say it at the top, and what this would mean is you could see what is the battle rating spread of the whole match. So if you're playing a 5-3 vehicle, and the spread is 5-7 to 4-7, then you're not going to encounter any 6-0s. And as long as you display this for both players, both teams, this shouldn't be an issue. The main idea behind it is to make sure that, if you're a new player or you're a veteran player, that you are able to know more about what's coming at you. One of the more, I suppose, annoying things for me is when I go into a battle of, let's say, around about 8-0, and the majority of my battles are going to be around 8-7, or even 9-0. And therefore I go into a presumption that I'm going to get into an 8-7 battle. So I have to presume that. And then if I get into a battle which is lower, obviously it's great. But at the same time, it's because it's kind of in my head that, the majority thing is going to happen every time. So it would be much better to be able to see on the scoreboard what the spread is. So therefore I won't be, perplexed when I get annihilated by an XM1. But the main thing with this as well is what I tend to do, and I know a lot of people do, is there are two ways of working out the battle rating spread. and one of them is the SP cost of your vehicle being brought in. Now, understand this only works in ground realistic, so just make sure that is that is very specific to that mode. And then the other one is to see what's on your team. So if you have a 7-7 vehicle, but everything else is, 6-7, 7-0, you're probably in a top 7-7 match. If you see vehicles which aren't above you, you're normally top tier. This can backfire, though. I have had matches where it has been full on my team, playing as Germany against somebody like, let's say, the Soviets, or... well, let's actually say Britain. So, you have a full team of Germans, and all of the team are 6-7, and then you have 1-7-0 or 1-7-7, or maybe even not even one Leopard 1, which would be 7-7, but let's say you have a 7-0 in the form of a Panther 2. The British team coming over that hill could easily have just a full team of Conquerors, and that would be fine in this matchmaking system, because they got rid of quantitative matchmaking a while ago. So for me, it would be nice to have some visual aid to be able to know at least a general standard of what's coming over that hill in front of me, instead of just having to guess at the start of the battle, because obviously there's a lot of decisions you make at the start of the battle which will be influenced by what you want to fight or what you are fighting. So yeah, it would be nice to have more information to make better decisions. He also wants to see a battle rating as a filter option when selecting vehicles. So what this means is when you're in the hangar, you're able to select by rank, so you can go all the way from rank 1 to 7, and you can only look at one specific rank of vehicle if you want to. In this system, instead of ranks, you would use BRs, and since you build lineups around BRs in naval, air arcade, or ground, it makes a lot more sense to do it by BR than it does rank. Remember, rank has nothing to do with matchmaking. It is simply there as a research tool, so to make sure that you grind out 5 vehicles per rank to get onto the next rank, or however many vehicles you need. It has nothing to do with matchmaking. The only thing that matters in matchmaking at this current time is the battle rating of the vehicle that you're using, or the battle rating of your lineup if you're looking at Air Arcade. The next one is from Rogue Starflyer, and he's talking about active protection systems. Now, this is something I'm kind of surprised we haven't got in game yet, but with the introduction of more and more ATGMs and also stuff like ASMs, I am pretty sure that we are going to get some APS systems soon. We have many vehicles in game that should have these systems, and it would be a good counter to have against any missile born thing coming towards you. So Rogue does a great job here talking about what are active protection systems, and it's as simple as this. It's any kind of system designed to prevent line-of-sight guided missiles, projectiles from acquiring and or destroying a target. So an APS is designed to stop missiles from reaching the destroyed and destroying the intended target. That's all it does. There are 2 types of this system, or 2 general terms, I should say. You have the soft kill measures, and then you also have the hard kill measures. It's as simple as that. The soft kill measures try and take away physical contact from the ordeal, and the hard measures are as simple as just throwing something at the incoming projectile to try and stop it in its tracks. So let's talk about some of the soft kill measures that are on offer. You have an IR or UV scrambler. The way this works is the missile comes in, it is seen coming in, it is then detected using radar from the system, then a laser warning and the laser warning receivers around it, then with acoustic sensors detecting the initial detection as well, and also pulse Doppler radars sometimes also detecting it. So it gets a lock-on onto where the missile is coming from. Once this missile is confirmed to be coming on from a specific direction, and the MCD, which is the missile countermeasure device, the multi-threat jammer, would disrupt the enemy ATGM operator's ability to acquire and control the missile's flight to the intended target at a distance of about midway to the target, and then, using an infrared or ultraviolet beam, force the missile into the ground. So it's as simple as this. ATGM is coming towards you. An MCD, the missile countermeasure device, detects the incoming missile. It then moves or turns towards the incoming missile, fires an infrared or an ultraviolet beam at it. This screws with the ability of the ATGM to be able to, actually fly using the controls, and it just smashes into the ground. This is basically what happens. So see it as, if you want to see it in a more physical term, maybe you're struggling with the mental image of it. Imagine like somebody has thrown like a sponge at you, and you blast it with a hose. And because it has a bunch of water in it and everything like that, it's forced down into the ground before it's supposed to hit you in the face. That's one of the easiest ways I can, describe it, I suppose. Then you have infrared smoke screens, which work in a similar way, apart from instead of having to, acquire the target and fire something at it in the form of an infrared or an ultraviolet beam, all you have to do is deploy smoke, and the smoke itself disrupts the guidance system. So it doesn't just stop the visual sight of you, it also grounds the missile in the process. Now, all of this can be an automatic system. It doesn't have to be something which has to be done by the commander, but I'm sure it could be as well. It's basically just an infrared smoke screen. So it confuses the ATGM, forces it into the ground. And then we have the hard kill measures. So what are the hard kill measures? A hard kill measure is basically just physically firing stuff at the missile itself, as I said. There are a few different systems that we have. You've got the Galax system, the Trophy system, and also the Droz system. The most probably one we've talked about the most is the anti-ship system. The anti-ship system is the one, the minigun that you may be familiar with, where, I suppose it's called a railgun, isn't it? The one which has at least been talked about a lot over recent years is the railgun idea. And when a missile is coming in, you just fire as much stuff at it as possible when it comes to weight and just try and knock it off course or annihilate it. There are other systems out there, though, like the Trophy APS system, which is used by Israel, and it's also exported to the UK and the US. So this is how the active protection works on a system like that. So you have an ATGM coming in here. If you can see it, the active protection fires off at it and just annihilates it. I also believe the Germans also have one, which is on one of their most modern APCs, but what happens is it has like large blocks on the side, and if anything comes anything close to it, it explodes into it to make sure that the contact is away from the APC, and to make sure that, nothing happens to the APC. And it's much better having to pay for a device to keep you alive than to explain to somebody why someone died. It's as simple as that. Then you have the quick kill system as well, which goes through how it works in this one. You can see the ATGM being fired, and goes the rocket, and once again just battering it to death with a counter projectile. That's pretty much how hard kill systems work. You detect what is coming at you, you throw something at it, whether it be explosive, whether it be just straight mass. Now, also in this thread, it talks about how you could implement it. You would put it in as a rank 4 modification right here. And once you unlock the system, depending on what the system is, if it's soft or if it's hard, this is an example of the soft system. So in order to counteract the incoming missile, you would have to turn the turret of your tank to line up with the effective APS protection, which you're seeing here. This is an example for the T-55A. Once it's activated and then the ATGM is coming in, the hard kill system would launch a small counter missile that would automatically destroy any single missile within a predetermined radius. So this would be specifically for the T-55A, but it's talking about how you could add in a hard kill APS protection system. Then you have one which is much more the soft kill APS system, which is on the Brenner. So you'd have a kilometer radius, it would detect a missile coming in, you would hit the button, and once the button is hit, it would fire a beam at it once you turn towards it, or it would deploy smoke depending on what's going on. So yeah, those are how the two systems would work in game. I think it makes sense, and as you can see, there is a lot of vehicles already that could have this system in game, and it even on the Brennus, as pointed out here, it is already modeled on the model itself. So it could definitely be, a good addition. Little Clug just been added, also could have it, and then obviously future editions as well. And he also gives a bunch of stuff about the specifications and what he believes the benefits of it would be. I mean, the benefits are simple. You'll be able to counteract ATGMs, whether they come from the ground or above, in a more meaningful way. This is a system that I hoped they would add when ATGMs were added, but we've had to wait a few years, and still it's not here in the game. So hopefully soon it will be here, so yeah, we can at least test it out and see if they're going to add any automatic ideas to it. The next one is very much a one which would be lovely to see, but I tell you what, it would be this would be one of the most surprising things, I think, because so much work would have to go into this to make it happen, but it would be, well, at least from my point of view, very much appreciated. This is from Jer5345. And he's talking about adding soft body physics for aircraft. And he uses the example of beam NG drive, and also he talks about digital molecular matter, which is the idea that you can add mass to something in a dynamic way, and it will feel the force of that mass and therefore break, or weight becomes an actual thing in the physical model, and because if you add more weight to a system, it becomes more under stress, therefore it shows that stress. And so it's not just a 1 or 0 binary where you go from either okay or broken. There is a gradual change to broken from being okay. Basically digital molecular matter and soft body physics is showing those transitions in a much better way. And BeamNG does it great. Also, next car game Wreckfest does it great. I don't think that was ever fully released though, sorry about that. But you can see in this video here, hopefully I don't get copyrighted, but you can see the physics on offer and how it is displayed. So the idea is that you would model full machines like this, and look at the crumple. The crumple is beautiful, it even knocks off the tail, and you can see that it's just much more defined. There's a lot more of, instead of just hard hits or just holes in stuff that you get in War Thunder, instead there are more crumple effects, there are more things which feel a lot more real than what you see from War Thunder right now, which is more of a 0 or 1 state, which is why in-game you have a skin for okay and a skin for damaged. There is no intermediary there where you can only get hit once and therefore you only have 1 bullet hole in your plane. In tanks and naval, you can, at the higher graphical settings, or depending on what's going on in the battle, you can spot individual shots gone into tanks. So the building blocks are there, but the issue is the extra thing, which would be crumpled armor and stuff like this. So as I said, this would be so much work, and it would be a hell of an upgrade to War Thunder if this ever happened, to add this style of physics into the game. You can see here how it crumples up, and this isn't even a great example of it. What would be a better example is, of course, the cars that you see in Beam NG. The other thing as well is it would be more realistic. There was a lot of planes back in the day where, as you can see, they took a hell of a lot of damage from aircraft, but were still able to, survive and get home. And if you could realistically model that in War Thunder along with the damage model and the flight model, it could make War Thunder a hell of a lot more realistic. The problem is, as I said though, is this would be so much work, but I tell you what, it would be a dream. This would be amazing if this ever came to the game. The next one is by Jer5345 as well, and is talking about vapor clouds on jets in high-speed turns. Now, of course, this one matters a lot because we're going further and further into the modern day. We've hit 2016 in ground vehicles. I believe we're at about 2010 in helicopters. Naval, I believe, is in the 70s, the 1970s with the Chikugo, and then also, I believe planes are in the 70s. I'm not exactly sure about that one, though. I don't know when the T2 was officially out, since it, of course, was a trainer. So, with that, it is much more important for us to have a look at little visual effects which would make the game a hell of a lot nicer to look at, and this would be one of them. So when you see most jets in high-speed turns, you can kind of see a cloud on the wings, and this isn't a supersonic effect. The supersonic effect, the Prattle-Glauert singularity, which you see here, is the effect that you may be thinking of. This instead is when you turn at a high angle of attack, and you get what would you call it? I've forgotten the word. It's like a water vapor on the wings, and it forms clouds around the wings due to the density of the water in the air or the humidity, as well as the speed of the aircraft. So you're basically, while moving, you are changing parts of the sky's density, God, how can I put this? I'm trying to do it in a layman term, but I'm struggling. But the idea is, as you push hard one way, you are forcing a lot of forces one way, therefore it is going to affect the general calculation of what the sky looks like or what's in the sky, so therefore it's going to clump stuff together. I think that's probably the best way of putting it, but I know a lot of people are going to shout at me like that, especially since I'm a scientist, but I'm just trying to keep it simple for people. So the next one as well that is added is some wingtip vortices. Now these are of course seen mainly on planes which have just taken off, but they are lines which follow the edge of the wings that you can see here. Now there is also a really nice there's a really nice video of it here, and it's lovely to see. You kind of have it in War Thunder, but it isn't fully there yet. It would be nice if it was a little bit more there. It doesn't have to be fully there, but all of these things, as I said, as we go more into the modern day, people are going to be asking more from. The next one is from Tango23, and he talks about the issues with the idea of the callouts in game, such as attention to the map, because from an actual military point of view, doesn't make a lot of sense. So for him, it would be much better if you said other things which would be more realistic to actual combat. So the examples that he gives, instead of just attention to the map, you could say, for example, contact grid B4. So this would be if you mouse click on the area of the map, which is B4, and the prompt would be contact grid B4. So it would tell you that there is contact there, that there is an enemy there, and it would tell you what grid bearing it is as well. Now, obviously, this would be a little bit more work because you'd have to record a bunch of voice lines, and I believe for ships, they tried to do some new voice lines, and generally the community didn't like them, like the torpedo ahead, stuff like that. But I think there is room for, more voice lines in the game. And, we could probably try and make some sound mods or something something based around this, which could work as well. He also goes through some examples of his own experience during the Cold War peacetime, and how you would actually talk on the radio. So initially, someone would say contact, wait out, to advise of a contact when you're on an advance to contact, and then once your gunner and loader are doing their job, then is the time to give a full contact. So you'd say Tango 2, this is Tango 2-3, contact grid 177345. Soviet T-64s across Hillcrest. I'm engaging, over. So trying to keep it as short and sweet as possible, but also giving all of the information that you need. So it is, I think, attention to the map, it is a little bit long. I think just saying contact and then a grid section would be a hell of a lot easier and simpler for the average player, and it would get the point across without having to listen to the long voice line. Also, there are other voice suggestions Tango has, such as the head back to base doesn't make a lot of sense. Neither does the enemy is winning, so maybe they could be changed. But I'm fine with returning to base because it tells my guys, at least in air forces, that I'm going back to rearm and refuel. It might be worth saying rearming, refueling, or something like that, though. Well, I'll have to have a think. Or the enemy is winning. Well, yeah, it's just that one is an odd one because obviously it's based on certain factors, like how many caps that you have or how many tickets that you have, and you can be in a position where you're going to win, or that you're about to make a big counterattack, or you have like more vehicles than them, or maybe you have a bunch of ground forces and they have no ground forces and they just have a few planes, so that you're going to win, but then you hear the enemy is winning and it's like, okay, cool. Like, what am I supposed to do about that? The announcer is wrong, but I understand why it's there. It's to try and give you impetus to try and win. So yeah, it's just one of those things. The wing flex is another thing. So if you don't know, on a wing, if you have sudden changes in G-load, it makes the wing wave a little bit. And the example I'll give is here. So you can see that it drops its ordnance, and then you can see that the... let's just see, can I loop this thing? How does that work? Do I have to click this? Yeah, there we go. Let's loop that, and you can see that as the bomb is dropped, the wing changes slightly, and then also when the plane moves itself, it also flexes a little bit to show the way that the wing is going. So this is obviously a realistic scenario, and it makes sense, especially when you think about the forces that are going over the wing itself, and also the change in navigation when it comes to the plane. And it would be nice to see this in game. You kind of have this in a way when you look at stuff which has leading edge slats or combat flaps and stuff, but it's not the same feeling as JER 534 is talking about here. It's a slightly different it's a slightly different thing which should affect the majority of the wing, especially the outer parts of the wing. And it's another thing that would benefit top tier jets quite a lot. It would also benefit a lot of other vehicles in the game. I'd love to see it. The last one is from Just a Guy 1250, and he is talking about burning tanks and fire physics, and I like this suggestion. One of the things that has been talked about a lot over the last few years is the fire physics in the game. Now, I remember a time ages ago where the fires that came off of planes were incredibly arcadey. Like they looked very big and they looked voluptuous. They were big booty fires. But the problem was they looked incredibly arcadey. Then we went through a period of time where they looked awful, and now we're at a period of time where they look pretty good, but they could use improvement, especially when it comes to tanks and aircraft. The fires on ships, I feel, are completely fine, but the ones that you see on planes and tanks they're just not the best. So the burning tanks idea. What happens when you kill a tank and it's on fire? It goes fully like dark gray, and this signals that the tank is dead. The problem with this, though, is this isn't very realistic. especially if the fire is not coming out of an area which makes any sense. So what Just a Guy wants to do is change it so you have the fire, you have the tank is dead, and you have the fire on the tank, and over time the tank itself slowly changes color to that grayness. Once you kill it, it is dead, but it doesn't change to that color until over a period of time, which would show that the fire is working its way through the vehicle. Now, obviously, this would be a great realistic change. The issue with this is it is nice to have physical confirmation when you kill someone, and sometimes, especially in realistic and simulator, the amount of times I've shot a dead tank, like I can't even count the amount of times that I've done that. So personally, I'm fine with the system the way it is, just because I know when a tank is dead or not. But if we're going for the realistic angle, especially in simulator battle, I would be completely fine with this new system too. It would mean I'd have to play a bit safer. I'm fine with doing that. The next one is the fire physics themselves. So as we talked about before, Just a Guy is saying how it's kind of weird how the fire is coming out of areas which have no cracks in them, which it doesn't make a lot of sense to. Like if it's coming out of an engine deck over here, it makes sense. If from the front here where it's blown up, it makes sense. But here, like the fire looks like it's just coming out the back of the turret instead of like through the cupolas and stuff. So, what he would personally like to see is the fire exit through hatches in the engine's deck where fire would actually have access to the outside world, and maybe even smoke coming out of a barrel or something like that. So instead of just having fire just randomly on a machine, instead have it tailored to each vehicle, so the fire would come out of specific ports, kind of like the blowout panels. But have they fixed the blowout panels on the 2A4 yet? I remember testing them, and the fire came out of the cupolas, and I was wondering, how the hell are the German guys in the turrets able to survive that? But yeah, it's definitely one of those things. It's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, that fire just seems to spontaneously come out of places. When it comes to tanks, it's not a huge deal, but it would be nice if it was changed. And then, of course, the fire and explosion effects. He believes that this should be updated to the fire and explosion textures to keep up with the rest of the beautiful graphics. And I do definitely agree with that. When tanks first came out and you saw an ammunition explosion from the tanks, it looked absolutely amazing. That same animation is still here, and we are on a different iteration of the Dagor engine, and it looks exactly the same. So for me, I think, along with all of the other graphical updates that we've had, the fact that we've had a ton of cool rain physics added, the water physics, also the more grittiness and the tracks that you're able to put everywhere, there is a ton of amazing graphical updates. Why not eventually do one for fire? That I can definitely agree with, along with the rest of the suggestion here. So as you can see, there's a bunch of really cool stuff that has been passed to the developers in May of 2019. If you want to have a look at any of it yourself in more detail, I've left a link in the description so you can have a look. And well, as always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank B. Young, Blackie, Cyborg James, Daniel Stanton, John Ryman, Martinez, Matati, Moxie, Nito, Nick Graham, Alobralo, Sebastian Corona, Super Cacti, and Elove Goat and Seductive Trash Can for supporting the channel.